Now, the final kind of objection that Singer considers and ultimately rejects to his arguments in this chapter is what I characterize as the evolution argument. And so he considers objections that are based on what sort of character or psychology or human nature human beings evolved or were created to have. So the idea here is that human beings evolved to act and feel in a way that is much less generally altruistic or empathetic, particularly towards strangers, than is dictated by your conclusion, by your general ethical framework. And so the idea here is, look, you can't, the objection goes, require people to act in a manner that's radically inconsistent with their nature. Especially, you can't expect them to act in this way that's radically inconsistent with human nature or human psychology in a consistent and prolonged way. So the idea here is, look, you can't expect pigs to fly. You can't expect human beings to be amazingly altruistic or empathetic when their psychology, their biological heritage, their evolution is such that they really just aren't capable of that kind of sustained altruism or empathy. So Singer responds to this by arguing as follows. He says, look, the facts regarding human nature, about how humans evolved to think, to feel, to act, facts about psychology and so on, the biological basis of behavior, these are all facts about human nature that do not dictate or otherwise determine the moral status of human actions. What determines the ethical status of actions are the ethical properties of that action, not the biological properties, not the evolutionary properties, and not even the psychological properties. So he says, look, I'm not going to debate with you about what the exact level of altruism is in human nature, what we can reasonably expect given the human evolution for a standard of behavior. What psychology or biology dictates is the norm for human behavior. I'm not going to debate any of that. What I'm going to tell you is this. Even if people evolved to act like Dora and Bob in those situations, even if people evolved to have this very limited ability to empathize or to act in an altruistic fashion over a long period of time, then at the very least, they should have to acknowledge the immorality of their actions. They should have to be judged on the basis of the moral status of those actions when we're thinking about the moral status of those actions. So it's the consequences of these actions for him that are going to be exclusively and exhaustively determinative of the ethical status of those actions. And that ethical status is not going to be changed, altered, or otherwise significantly mitigated by evolution, psychology, biology. So he would say things like this. Look, psychopaths, sociopaths, people like, say, Ted Bundy, right? They have a psychology that basically doesn't give them any capacity for empathy with other creatures. But we don't go like, well, look, so they murdered 50 people in cold blood, or so they tortured a whole bunch of people and animals and so on, right? That's just the way they are. We can't blame them. That's their psychology. He would say, no, that's wrong. When people commit acts of torture or murder or so on and so forth, he says the standard for judging those actions is an ethical standard. It's not a causal, historical, evolutionary, biological standard. Their actions are judged on the basis of the ethical or moral properties of those actions. And for him, that means there are consequences. So next we'll look at Cupper's response, and I'll also talk about another kind of response to Singer's argument.